All right, let's jump into it, guys. So, happy Thursday! Happy Thursday, snowy day. We've somehow made it, I hope. Obviously, we've had a lot of snow come through. Maybe not as much as we thought we'd get, but it's part of the deal. We live in Minnesota, so we gotta kind of live with it, guys. So, but thanks for joining us. My name is Derek Gruber, and I'm the director of business insurance at Cox Insurance. And today we are hosting a webinar with a special partner of ours, CyberFend. They are cybersecurity specialists here in the Twin Cities. And a little history about them. We've got to know each other, I guess, over the better part of 2 years. I've known Chris Stuffel previously in another life. And then between him and Daniel Metcalf, who'll be leading the bulk of this presentation, talking about some of the things that they see in the marketplace. They do a tremendous job talking about kind of some of the new regulations and laws that might be affecting your business and industry, depending on which space you currently sit in, how to stay in compliance and avoid fines, and then maybe busting some common myths that might be affecting your business. So kind of high level, I think about cyber risk management as it's definitely multifaceted. So think about it this way. So having strong cybersecurity up front, which is probably key to number one. And then number two is probably transferring to the appropriate cyber liability policy in the back end. So there's a lot that has to happen within there, but before you get there, you got to have the strong cybersecurity, even to get the right policy. And so I think many of you might relate to that, filling out applications and saying, hey, it's very technical. We're not sure how to do this. So I think as you see the presentation from Daniel, he'll go through some of the things that they see with their clients and how they can help you kind of go through some of that process. So overall, it's an evolving, changing landscape. It's something that we are very passionate about, and quite frankly, people need help because it's very, very technical. So I'll go ahead and just bring in Daniel. Daniel, do you mind having a quick introduction to who you are and kind of what you hope to accomplish today?
Yeah, no problem. So my name is Daniel Metcalf. I'm one of the managing partners at CyberFin. I'm the geek of the team. So I've spent the last 15 years building technology solutions to business problems. And most recently for the last, now it's 7 years, they add up fast, helping build cybersecurity solutions and services for, it originally started with banks and credit unions, and now we moved into financial services. And as we continue to grow in this market, now we're helping. Our goal is to try to protect as many small to medium-sized businesses as possible from cyber crimes and regulation fines.
Awesome. And Chris, do you want to say a couple words while you're kind of sitting in sunny Florida, rubbing it in for everybody?
Absolutely. It was a good time to leave. I think the biggest thing is for us is we've been in the financial services industry for 20 plus years. I've been wholesaling out to financial planners and insurance agents. And I think the thing we saw, the biggest issue is that the small market is just not being served in this space. And so I'm excited for Daniel to go through the presentation, but then also talk about some of the tools and products we've put in place to really take care of that small business, under 300 plus people. And we're just, Derek, you're seeing it from the cyber liability side right now. We're just seeing attacks increase a ton in the last 2 to 3 years on those small businesses. Mm-hmm. So yeah, thanks for joining us, Derek. Thanks for having us. I'm excited to kind of talk through all this.
Perfect. So I guess we can go and segue this to Daniel, unless there's any other comments you guys want to make. Otherwise, I kind of touched upon briefly the application process. So a lot's changed on the cyber liability policies themselves. So again, understanding how to get through that, I think Daniel can provide some insights into that space in particular too.
Yep, 100%. So just a little bit of housekeeping. So we'll just keep everyone on mute while I go through the presentation. We'll have the chat up. There's a specific time in the presentation for chat Q&A questions, but if you just have to ask, you just have to get it, so you don't forget it and you want to throw it into the chat, feel free to do so. From that standpoint of it, we'll give plenty of time at the end for any questions and any other items that we need to cover. Sound good? All right, so let's share my screen. So as I was saying, Allianz comes out with a risk report every single year, and for the first time ever, cybersecurity and cyber crimes has been #1 financial risk on Allianz's top 5 list for back-to-back years. And people always ask me, well, what's number two? It's business interruption. And guess what's the number one cause of business interruption in 2023, in 2022 last year? Cyber crimes. So we all know that this is no longer for the enterprise level organization. We all know that that cybersecurity is a hot topic here in 2023. So I just want to continue to go through and talk a little bit about how we actually got here and what it actually looks like. So insurance companies right now are seeing losses over 100%. So that means that more claims are going out than the premium that they're collecting, which is causing a big uproar within every single industry and association that's out there. So now you're seeing state governments, local governments, every 3-letter acronym, 4-letter acronym, 5-letter acronym government agency out there putting in their own rules and regulations and their own ways of being able to try to mitigate not only the impact of cyber crimes, but also try to create better awareness within each of the organizations. Unfortunately, even though they've been doing that, we're still seeing the cyber crime skyrocket in the amount of dollars that are being stolen, or that on the remediation costs and everything that's going to go with it, and they're only skyrocketing overarching year after year. And now that onus is being moved back down to us as business owners. It's moving down to us as citizens and individuals because of that level of growth year after year. So why is it still the number one crime, or excuse me, the number one financial risk to small businesses? It's because the crimes are getting more technical and the threats are increasing astronomically year over year, because now the nation states are the ones that are running the crime rings, which used to be smash and grab, right? So if you think about it, cybercrime 10 years ago would be, I was worried about somebody stealing $1,000 out of my checking account, or I was worried about somebody, maybe taking $1,000 worth of gift cards out of my business. Now with the conflict in the Ukraine, with the more and more geopolitical tensions when it comes to North Korea and some of the other nation states that are out there, their entire GDP is around driving and stealing money from you or extorting money from your business as a way to run their political agenda, whether it's their nuclear program or whether it's another, something else that they need to drive within their nation state. Ransomware attacks, although we heard, ransomware attacks, they're slowing down. It's completely opposite. The attacks and the frequency and total losses have just gone up. Where it has gone down is in the large enterprises. Where it's picked up speed is in the small to medium-sized businesses. So as of today, 1,000 employees to 1 employee businesses make up 70% of ransomware attacks in 2022. That is completely upside down on what was happening just 5 years ago. And that's because, as you're going to find out, it's the level of sophistication that they are able to do now to take on these attacks. We're talking about these are their professional jobs now, to try to find a way to steal money from a small to medium-sized business. The average cost of data breach is at an all-time high, and we can see that in the claims that are coming out from the cyber liability insurance itself. Attacks are no longer restricted to large companies. We've harped on that enough. And criminals have now found a way to breach the standard multi-factor authentication technology. That's a big deal in 2023, where everybody was like, MFA. Well, guess what? You put a roadblock in front, just one roadblock in front of a criminal or in front of a cyber attacker, they're going to find a way around it, and they already have in the multi-factor authentication technology. So what's going on within the organizations that this continues to happen, right? I always say, if the technology was great and if everything was out there, why is it still a $1 trillion business? Well, it's because technology and security and compliance are always in the conversation within an organization, but it doesn't necessarily look like a nice, easy conversation like this. It usually looks a little more like this, right? Constantly fighting over, do we put in the right budget for security? Do we put the right budget for compliance? Do we put the right budget in for productivity? How do we mix it all together? Can we even get access? There's a 2 million person shortage of cybersecurity engineers worldwide. If that was just 10% in the United States alone, that's a big number. So we're constantly having to look at the push and pull of what's going on between where do we invest our money and our time to grow our business and productivity, and what do we invest in order to protect what we've already built. And that push and pull, and the bad guys know that there's a gap there, and they're honing in on that gap and taking advantage of it. I've already introduced myself, but for those who are just getting here, again, I'm the geek. I just know build solutions to try to protect your organization. I have the best job at CyberFin, which is coming up with the right technology and services to help protect clients' businesses and work with amazing insurance organizations like Cox to be able to help educate the public and their customers, as well as help them find ways to make sure that everyone can get the coverage that they need with their insurance. So now that you got a little background of what's going on and a little bit about myself, let's talk more about the agenda that we want to cover today. We're going to talk about the top cyber crimes going on in 2023, the 3 myths of cyber risks, and then we want to give you some value before you leave today. So we're going to give you 3 best practices to protect against crimes and fines, no matter what size organizations that you are. So we'll quickly go into the top cyber crimes today. And these are in order of magnitude of loss, right? So what the biggest piece of loss is, that's the order that I put these into so that you can be prepared from that side. According to statistics, 1/3 of you that are in this webinar right now have seen something like this. This is no other than cyber extortion. The bad guy's gone in, they've put in their software inside your system, they've encrypted some files, or they've encrypted a software or a device and said, if you want to get this device back, something that you care and love for, or this data, you need to give us money in return. It's no different than being called ransomware, right? I call it cyber extortion because it's more than just, hey, give me a ransom, for getting something back, right? To encrypt something. It could mean, hey, I have all of these pictures from your computer. I'm going to go sell them on the dark web. Or I have all these people's information that I've now downloaded. I'm going to go sell it the dark web if you don't give me some Bitcoin. And I can't see everybody's hands. I think there's a hands on the Zoom that you can raise your hand, but how many here know how to buy a Bitcoin? Right? Not very many, but did you know you could buy it at Quick Trip? Right? But needless to say, how are you going to be able to get a Bitcoin with them? And as you can see on the screen here, the timer's going off. You're running out of time. The more time that goes by, the higher the price of the Bitcoin that you have if you want to get your data back, right? Not only that, but if you don't know how to buy a Bitcoin, look, they've got great customer service. You now have an about Bitcoin, how to buy a Bitcoin. Contact us. Like the bad guys are even getting good at customer service. They know what it takes in order to make sure that they get paid. This is a very dangerous crime. $458,000 is the average cost of a ransomware attack. And that's not just for the big guys, as we've talked about, right? Very, very careful on making sure that this crime is starting to get thwarted. Second, business email compromise. So as you heard about the ransomware potentially going down, but we've already kind of rebuted that. Business email compromise has become the newest fashionable crime. And basically that's fancy words for saying they find a way to get your business email and password and your multi-factor authentication to be able to act almost like the person in the middle, right? So that even though you think you're just doing business as usual, you think your employees are doing business as usual, they've compromised the email, they have access to it, and now they're going to start to interact with it, whether that's take money, whether that's start to, we have examples where they've gone through the sent files of all the invoices that you've sent out, redid the Adobe PDFs, put in a different routing number and said, oh, by the way, you're late, but we have a different bank, so please go ahead and send it somewhere else. That's an example of a business email compromise. It actually looks like it's the person, and they can reroute the traffic. So it can look like they're sending emails all on their own and they're rerouting the traffic, so the person actually never sees it being sent out of their sent box. That's the way now that with ransomware getting the much attention they are, the second largest impact crime is business email compromise. All right, some of you have heard of this one. This is called fund transfer fraud. You've seen them before. I mentioned it earlier before. Hey, send me $10,000 worth of gift cards. You got to go buy $10,000 worth of gift cards tomorrow and send me just send me the receipt, or just send me the codes so that we can hand it out to the companies, whatever it might be. There are also fund transfer frauds when it comes to wire fraud. So they've changed a couple numbers in the wire. They want you to go ahead and wire over some money, and you think it's going to the business that you're intended to pay, and instead it's going somewhere else. A huge fund transfer fraud crime going on right now is fake employment on Indeed. So you're putting your ad out on Indeed because you're looking for a new employee. They go in as a fake employee. They start to talk about how you're going to pay them because they're 100% remote. They actually go and hire somebody else to do the work. So they actually deliver the work, right? But who you're sending the money to is the bad guy. So they go hire somebody behind the scenes to go actually deliver the work. And then the money, even though they've been telling them the whole time, hey, you're going to get paid, you're going to get paid. The bad guy gets the money, not the person that actually did the work. It's a huge thing going on right now, and it can really slow down your organization. So watch out for this fund transfer fraud. All right. The next biggest crime is just the data breaches on their own. Bad guys have started to figure out that the data itself has become very, very lucrative in being able to sell it. Either A, in selling it, that data, or B, using it to figure out your IP, reverse engineer it, hire it out of China and go and start doing it themselves. Using that data to extort you out of money. And it can be as little as 1,000 records to 10,000 records. We've seen a case recently where a small healthcare company, they were extorted for $500,000 because they said, we're going to send an email to every single one of these people saying we have the information and you're not willing to pay the ransom in order to give me the money. So it wasn't even really a ransom attack where they're going to pay the Bitcoin. It was threatening to do the ransom and threatening to tell everybody about it. And that means that HIPAA would have to get involved. The state of Minnesota have to think about all the ramifications from it, all from just a small 1,000 records that they're able to take. All right. All right, now that we've got you all nice and scared about, okay, what are the attacks themselves, let's talk a little bit more about how they execute against those attacks. And my favorite thing about being in technology is they come up with really fun names when it comes to execution, right? Like phishing without an F in it, right? It's just a PH. Social engineering, malware. I mean, what's better than bad software as mal? I love it. And insider threats. And we'll go through each real briefly on exactly how they do it so that you can look out for it as far as your business is concerned. We've all heard about phishing emails. This is an example of a phishing email. All they're really trying to do is figure out something and learn about you through email, right? So they're phishing to find out with bait who's going to take our bait in order to execute something against it. One of those crimes I talked about before. This is an example of someone that's trying to run a business email compromise attack. They're trying to tell you that your password's about to expire. I'm using this phishing email saying that, hey, didn't know that your network password's about to expire in the next 24 hours. If you click on this link, you're actually going to go to a legitimate website. We're going to ask you for your login and password to make sure that you can update your network. And now they've got your login and password to maybe your email. Maybe they've got it to, how many people have used the same password over and over and over again. I admit it, you do it, right? So now they're going to go try to find where else can they get their password. The second biggest way that right now, the two biggest places that they're executing this phishing attack on beyond email is Facebook and LinkedIn. Just for you to know, that's what they're figuring out, is that if your login and password to Facebook many times can be the same password to get into your business email. Just something to think about. All right, spear phishing. So how do we go from phishing to spear phishing? Well, spear phishing is just what it sounds. We're going for the big fish with a big spear, right? So we're going shark hunting, and we're going to find out the CEO of the company, one of the key persons, whatever it is, and I'm going to specifically target that email, or I'm going to spoof that person. I'm going to act as that person to try to get somebody within the organization off their game. This is an example where someone had gotten into Timothy's email box, right? Business email compromise we talked about. Got in his email box and now is acting as Timothy and spear phishing all of the employees within the organization and all the customers, right? So now they're spear phishing the customers because he went in the sent box and saw all of the people that this particular person sends emails to, especially if it's RFPs, as you can see on here, right? Insurance, you know all about RFPs, right? So hey, check out this RFP. Well, why wouldn't I be getting an email from Timothy about an RFP? This totally makes sense. And then I download this document and now I've got malware on my computer. And then nothing happens. So you're like, oh, that's weird. Nobody ever emails Timothy or calls him or does anything. They just go on their merry way. And 3 months later, they're now in your system and they're going to actually execute against it. All right, social engineering. It is just like it sounds. They are socially gathering information to try to get you off your game. right? So this is a very detailed, very long attack, but it's very lucrative. And it's on ransomware and BEC, business email compromise. This is an exact way that they can get away with it. Fund transfer as well. What they're going to do is they're going to look you up on LinkedIn. They're going to look you up on Facebook. They're going to see what they can find in a social profile. You get those fake text messages where it says something like, hey, how you doing? And you accidentally reply or you do something to it. There's nothing malicious in that email. They're just making sure that that's your phone number. And now they know that they've got somebody that's live on the other end and that it's a cell phone number. They're going to start to figure out these different things, and then they're going to use it against you, or they're going to use it as you to somebody else. So these are just some examples of like, hey, I think, I found out all your information. Hey, I didn't know that you did business with Derek Gruber too. Oh, isn't that great? Yeah, we're big pals and we buy lots of insurance from Mr. Gruber. Let's talk about that experience. And then you start sharing some information like, oh yeah, we've got a $10,000 E&O policy with them. And you start giving them more information. And then they go to Derek and say, hey, Derek, blah, 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 I have some information. You got to send me a new wire. You got to send me my premium payment, whatever it might be to take Derek off his game. That's exactly how they're using social engineering to get you off your game. So it can be just as simple as, hey, can you send me some gift cards? We've all heard that one before, but it's getting more and more complicated because they can get more and more money out of you. And I'll give you some examples as we go along. Malware, just like it sounds. It's a piece of software that's malicious that's going on the computer. The number one way that malware gets in your system is through email. Number two way that malware gets put in your system, your mobile phone. I know Apple did a great job talking about how secure their Apple iPhones are, right? They've figured out a way around the Apple iPhone. They know you use this thing, right? This is an extension of our bodies now. They know how much you use that thing, and they found a way to get malware onto your software that can then leap its way into your computer system, into your network. And we can get into the complications of it, but just know that you're not safe on any device if you're not paying attention. So this is an example where, hey, a healthcare audit survey. It happens in employee benefits all the time. We have to update your healthcare survey, right? If you're not really careful on where this is coming from, this could be a bad piece of malware. And this is an exact replica of what we found out in the field of someone using this healthcare survey as a way to put bad code inside the computer that even their MSP didn't find for months. That was stealing data and sending it to Russia for months. Malware can be in many different forms, not just in Word documents or Office documents, right? There can be an adware. So if you still see this weird pop-up on your computer that looks like an ad, all they're waiting to do is for you to click on something, and then they've got some information, or they may even be able to download something on your computer if you click on one of those ads. Keyboard loggers. This was a big deal when everybody went home from COVID, right? People were starting to download software and they were downloading ways to be more productive, and there'd be a key off the Google Chrome store, and there'd be a keyword logger on the back. It is just as it sounds. They're looking for patterns. They're watching every single one of your keystrokes, and they're looking for patterns, because if it's a pattern, what is it typically? An email and password, right? Because you're using the same thing over and over and over again. That's how they're getting the credentials. Trojan horses, you've heard them all before. They're very, very famous, right? It looks like a regular piece of software, and actually it's a bad piece of software, and it actually goes out to all of the devices because you've downloaded it to all the devices within your organization, not just yours. So it infects it all at one time. And then mobile spyware, I just already talked about, right? So not only do they have malware on there, but there's mobile spyware. They're trying to get into your camera. They're trying to get into your listening system, right? Siri's not just for good guys anymore. They have their own bad guy Siri that they can just like Siri listens to you every single day. They actually can get software on your phone so they can listen to you every single day and listen to your conversations, listen to what's going on. That's the way they can use social engineering against you to try to send them or confuse you and get you money. Here's the biggest threat to your business today. It's insider threats. Whether it's a malicious insider who's actually, like I told you about the fake employee, remote employee, an inside agent who's, it happens, people, where there are bad people in the world that come in and they find a way to steal money from you through technology while working for your company in-house. Emotional employees, not necessarily that they're trying to attack you, but maybe they are emotional and say, hey, you guys hurt us and so hurt me, so I'm going to hurt you back. I'm going to let a bad guy in. I'm going to click on this link. I don't care what you say, right? Can be just reckless, right? People just, they're overwhelmed. They're working really hard. You train them all you want, and they can just be a little bit reckless, and they click on the wrong thing or they send the wrong email. Chris and I were just at an event where a woman was fired. She was doing 3 people's jobs. She accidentally wired $10,000 without without, because she was in such a hurry, and they ended up firing her for that, even though she was doing 3 purpose jobs. It wasn't that she was malicious. She just was being reckless at that particular time. And third parties. Everyone knows the very famous Target breach. That it was an HVAC company that came in, and them connecting into their system is what got into the POS system for Target. Obviously, that sounds like, oh yeah, that's Target. This happens all the time. There are people that'll come in, they can put they'll put thumb drives into a computer when you're not looking. They'll take pictures of things on your computer. They'll see the sticky note with your login and password on your computer and take a picture of it and use it later. It happens, people. These third-party vendors, it happens. So if you've got a sticky note with your login and password right now, here's tip number 1. Please remove it off your computer. So that way no one can get access. I don't care if you think no one's ever going to see this. It can happen. It has happened. So we'll do that right off the bat. All right, so what does this mean? Thanks, Daniel. You scared the heck out of us now on what these crimes look, what the crimes are, how they execute those crimes. Brass tacks, what does it mean for my organization? Well, the average cost of a breach in North America for a small to medium-sized business in 2022 was $150,000. I don't know about you, but not many small businesses can handle $150,000 just leaving their account that particular day. Especially because that means probably a couple of 1 or 2 employees that they could have hired to grow their business or to make their business more efficient. That's just right out the door, right? That could be payroll. What do I know? 60% of small and medium businesses that are breached go out of business within the first 6 months. Well, look at it. It's $149,000, right? Can they afford that much loss in cash flow? Oh, by the way, if you look 2 screens down, it's 22 days is the average time it takes, or that you'll be down to remediate from a breach. That is a lot of time. I know a lot of business can't even go an hour being down and being able to survive, let alone 22 days. We have a customer now, but prior to us, who still has a manufacturing facility that has not sent a part out in over 6 months since their ransomware attack. That's a lot of money that in a lot of machines not doing any work. The average ransomware payment went up from $7,600 in 2018 to $165,500 in 2021, and we're seeing reports of $250 to $300 in 2023 already. How is this happening? Because the only layer of protection small businesses are doing is cyber liability policies by themselves. And if you go look at the policies, the average payment for a ransomware is $165,000 in 2021. How did they do it? They take a picture of the cyber liability policy that you left on your desktop. And when you go to the ransom person and say, hey, I don't have the money, they go, oh yeah, you do. Here's your cyber liability policy right in front of you that says you get to send me $165,000 you put in a claim. That's literally how the dollars got put up to this high. And the bad guys figured out it's much more lucrative to be in the ransomware game than it is trying to smuggle cocaine or bodies or any other crimes that you can think of over borders. So they're finding ways to make it happen more and more and more. All right. Okay, enough scaring. Let's just talk about myths, right? I'm actually going to reduce this down based on our time. I'm going to reduce this down to 3 myths, the 3 major myths that you need to know as a small business owner. Number 1, size of business matters. Don't need to beat this dead horse. We've already talked about it. It's not for the enterprises anymore. The small and medium-sized businesses are the target. Why? Because you have access to sensitive data, whether within your system or you're connected to somebody else's system. In insurance, you're connected to multiple different carriers and companies, and you use all these different quoting tools. Plus, you have access to all of your clients, right? You need to make sure, right? They know that you have access to 2 different levels, to 2 different companies, whether the individual company and multiples of those or one big one. So you become the target. The small business becomes the target because they also know that you need to move that data in order to get paid. They also know you have access to larger organizations and that you'll do anything to make sure that you cannot lose your customer at that larger organization. And you do not have as much access to the technology and the people that you need to be able to have the infrastructure to stop the crime until now. And it's where the money is. They wouldn't be going after the criminals have ROI too, right? They wouldn't be going after the small and medium-sized businesses if they weren't getting the $165,000 to $500,000 every single shot. It's worth their time. Right? So the targets of ransomware I'm going to talk about real quick. As you can see on this chart here, it's non-discriminatory. Other than the public sector, everybody else, every industry is equal. So whether you're a professional service, whether you're an HVAC company, a manufacturer, You sell widgets online, it doesn't matter. You are now a target. It's equal all the way across. And like I mentioned earlier, 70% of all the crimes now for ransomware, which again is the highest loss area, is for businesses 1,000 and lower. That's huge. So you can already see started the shift that's going on there. Just think about business email compromise. If you took the two together, 90% is 1,000 employees and less. Half of them under 100. That's the big trend going on. And that's why financial risk through cybercrime is as high as it is. All right, here's the quick scary story. This is real life, just happened. 15-person professional service firm just lost 100 grand. Here's how they did it. The employee provided a login and password through and got their multi-factor authentication spoofed by an email just like this. It's actually a security email that they received, and they went in and put in their login and password and put in their multi-factor authenticator code. Nothing happened. Then a couple months later, all of a sudden, charges started showing up against credit cards that were already placed in some of their vendor sites. So if you think about it, they were buying inventory, they were buying supplies, they were buying all these different things where they had stored the company credit card and company ACH into that, and they're using their login and password and MFA to approve the purchases. In less than a month, $100,000 in cash was gone from that organization. Now, thankfully, someone had picked up on it pretty within the first 15-ish, 20-ish days, and they still started rerouting and changed the passwords, changed the MFA, and got all the banking information out there. But it took them days to get that all, had to think about all the sites and making all those things happen and trying to figure out whose login and password is it. Took them a couple days just to figure that out. Right. So that's an example of where just a simple BEC crime can be a big hit on your organization. Myth number 2, the cloud protects me. Not true. That was something that we were saying, like, look, the fact is, if you just say, hey, we're moving to the cloud without any extra cybersecurity to go along with it, all you did was bring the bad guy to all your files, right? Because if they put something into a file on your computer, they can encrypt it, and when you send it up to the cloud, you're just putting the bad guy into the cloud, and now they can infect everything that's inside the cloud and everything that touches it. Especially if there isn't baby gates along the way that stops those documents and gets them reviewed every single time. The cloud providers themselves have stopped providing the level of security that's necessary in order to mitigate that for 2 reasons. One, nobody wants to pay for extra cloud storage, and there's a price war going on between the different cloud organizations. Number 2, they don't want you to get upset about all the lack of productivity if you have to go through a couple extra steps to move documents or to move your information or to recall that information onto your device. You don't want those extra steps because you want your information fast. So they've stopped putting those protocols in place and left it on to you and your organization because they want you to stay with them where their competition doesn't have those gates in place. Because they're saying, oh, well, you'll just go to our competition, so they're not doing it at all. Cloud security and the business-based application systems that sit on your phone no longer have the security that they had before, and they have severe gaps. So they're leaving it up to you to make those decisions and to put the security in place. They're not doing it themselves anymore. Myth number 3, choosing tools and technology is the best place to start. Fortunately, there are some fantastic technologies out there that can help an organization identify when a bad guy's in the system and can help you identify when they're under attack. It still takes a human being to make sure that they can alert somebody, look into it, threat hunt for what might be out there, fix it, whatever it might be. There still needs to be somebody to do it. And you and I know, or what you don't know, is that the majority of attacks and breaches do not leave a tech trail behind. So even if you're very technical and you're leaving it up to the software and the technology, they don't leave a trail as they go along. That's why they're bad guys, right? Some of them leave a door open, but those are not the smartest of the criminals. They don't leave a tech trail behind. They already know that. So it does take some human being and a human eyeballs to go through all of these and make sure that they're keeping the attackers out. Alerts, updates, patches, and remediation. It's an always-on activity. So it's not just something where I put the software into our system and I walk away from it. It's not a set it and forget it. It's always on. And business owners and IT professionals did not get in the business of being a security guard, right? It is all cybersecurity. IT is not IS, right? So some of them are. but majority of them did not get in and want to be security guards, looking around to see who's trying to get into our information, looking around to say, oh my gosh, I have this big dashboard. I don't know about you, but I've talked to a lot of business owners who are like, yeah, I don't want to go look at a dashboard where I've got 250 alerts today on people are trying to go after my data or go after my employees. Rather have somebody else do that. So yes, try to, the tip here is to try to find the technology that you can manage to, or that someone in your organization can manage to, or find the right people that are going to manage your cybersecurity for you, and they'll bring their technology with. That's my recommendation on that. All right, quickly, 3 best practices. I want to make sure you can leave this meeting with some actionable items for your organization. So I'm going to give you 3 best practices to severely lower your risk as a small to medium-sized business when it comes to cybercrimes. Very quickly, I got to give you an analogy so you can start to think through this and use your mind's eye. There is no industry that I can think of that has spent more time trying to figure out how to severely reduce not only the risk of an accident, but also the overall impact after an accident happens than the auto industry. Since the first day that the motorized buggies started going down the rutted roads, they've been trying to figure out, how do we make these as safe as possible? Why? Because if there's less drivers, there's less people buying cars. Right? So they've spent millions and millions of dollars and time over going from different phases of protection and security. Cybersecurity is in that spot right now. If you think about the way a car works today, they've gone away from making the body, right, the car itself, the most protected, and they went to making each of the individuals in the vehicle as protected as possible. We call that user-based security. So now they're trying to make each, the driver and the passengers, as secure as possible in the vehicle. They still protect the vehicle too. We'll talk about that, right? They still make sure that each individual is protected. And if they put all those different individual protections together, that makes it overall stronger. And if every vehicle has that same mindset, has that same protection, now you just made the roads you made the roads and the travel more protected. So how have they done the user-based technology? Let's talk about multi-factor authentication. That's what a key fob is, right? Your key fob to get in your car, and your key fob, and you might have to put a password or put your foot on the pedal to make the car go somewhere, right? That is multi-factor authentication, but it's only one layer. People can figure out a way to get around that, right? They also have driver assistance technology. I don't know about you, but my vehicle is a couple years old. Every single time I start to sway over a little bit, or I want the car to help me parallel park or whatever it is, the car is just doing it for me. Why? Because they know it can actually be safer if they do it than having me do it, right? And they know I'm getting distracted, I'm driving far, whatever it might be. So they put in these different things to make sure that as we're going down the superhighway of life, that we're being protected. If there is an impact, we have all these airbags, right? When we first started, airbags were only under the driver and the passenger. Now they got airbags all over the thing. If it gets in the water, it might start to float here pretty soon. That is exactly why they put it in there, because now they want to lower the impact if something were to happen. And it's still, they have crumple bodies and seat belts, and they've got beacons going off now if you get into an accident. They've added hands-free technology because they all know we're going to be using our cell phones, right? I get to talk into my car now like the old kit days, right? And it talks back to me to make phone calls and text messages. It's fantastic. They know because they think of all the things that user and the passengers are doing within inside that vehicle other than just driving, and they're coming away to protect you while you're doing that. And then driver's education. Educate your employees, right? So driver's education, my daughter's 15. If I had to go through driver's education, I'm not sure. I think it'd take me a couple of years to pass. They are doing such a better job of educating, making them go through longer classes, more times on the road, all those different things. That's what the auto industry has pushed to severely lower the number of accidents on the road. And there's many percentages that you can go look up, as well as what happens when there is an impact has gone down dramatically as the impact of what happens after there's an accident. Cybersecurity is no different. So if you really want to best practice to really close the gaps that your organization has from each employee, it's think about the user first. What does the user have access to? And have I put a security protocol in layers on each one of those different parts of my employee? So think of the C as the employee. Do I have multi-factor authentication every time they want to get into not only my device, but every single cloud software application that's out there, especially email? Has to have it, right? But is that the only layer that? Can a bad guy get through that? Absolutely. So now you have to have a firewall and a VPN, right? So firewalls are great. A lot of companies have them. That is not the only thing you need to do, because we've all sent people hybrid. We sent them remote, right? We've got them going to public places with public Wi-Fi and hotels and the airport. Having a VPN that's tied to your firewall just adds another layer of protection for your remote and hybrid employees. Then you go down to the email threat protection. So let's say that the multi-factor authentication fails, the firewall and the VPN fails. Now you've got email threat protection. You have something inside filtering every single email for the bad guy, right? We're just adding another layer, another gap. And it goes back the other way. Somebody gets through the email, the VPN is going to block them from doing anything. That also lies into endpoint protection. Endpoint protection is just what it means. It's software on the device that's looking for bad code, bad software, data leaving the computer and going somewhere else over the internet. It's looking for anomalies in the device itself to make sure that a bad guy isn't operating on that device. And remember, the bad guy could be an insider too, somebody in your organization. Also includes mobile device management. Told you before, if mobile devices aren't as protected as you think, and employee awareness training. So if we put protocol, each one of these 6 dots over our individual user, and we have 20 employees, and each of those 20 have these 6 things all connected together, all managed by people that know what they're doing and love being in cybersecurity, you have now severely lowered your risk of your organization. Whether it's just you by yourself as a solopreneur or 1,000 person, you have now hardened your organization from a cyber criminal. All right, so that's best practice number 1, mind the gaps. Think about where the gaps is at the user level, not the building level. All right, 2, ignorance is a bad defense. This goes into compliance a little bit, but it also right now with the new laws coming out, every single company, the FTC now has their own rules. Every single company is now responsible for doing their own cybersecurity and reporting incidents. And they've come out with protocols that you have to do and have in place. And they're saying ignorance is no longer a defense. Right? You know now that they're doing this. They are giving you plenty of time and plenty of warning, and they've said that you need to start following the laws because we have to lower this $1 trillion problem. And there's a lot of laws, it goes by different states and associations, but I'm going to break it down to you and make it, here's your best practice. You have to have 2 things in your organization if you want to be compliant. 1, reasonable cybersecurity measures in place. What I just showed you as the user-based is the most reasonable cybersecurity measure that you can put in place. 2, you must report all data breaches to the government and to your customers if you believe data was compromised. It's better to get ahead of it than trying to hide it. That's exactly what the governments have said. We'd rather you tell us so we can get ahead of it than having to hear from a consumer. Because if a consumer turns you in, that's when the all guns a-blazing happens. And that's all they've said. All these laws and all these different rules, if you really break it down, it comes down to those 2 things. So that's my best practice for you. Think about, as long as I have reasonable cybersecurity in place and I'm prepared to report anything that might come out of my organization ahead of time, I'm good to go. We're going to get a recording of this afterwards. I'm going to put this up real quick. You can also think of it in this terms of what reasonable cybersecurity means. Can I identify if there's an attack? Can I protect myself from an attack? Can I detect when there's a bad guy still in my system and what was taken? Can I respond to this attack? And can I recover from it? Can I recover that person's data if it was taken? Or can I recover the dollars? Or can I recover whatever it is? If you can do those 5 things within your organization and you're comfortable with it, you now meet the minimum reasonable cybersecurity standard. I'll leave this up for just 10 seconds. Basically, the state and federal level have put in, no matter what the 3-letter, 4-letter acronyms are, they're putting in their own rules. And again, as I stated before, you just stick to the NIST one I put up there, you'll be able to meet all the different compliance regulations. All right, practice number 3. This one you can really take home to everybody today. Criminals are lazy. And they are looking for the greatest ROI. So all you need to do is make your agency, your company, your home office the least amount attractive to crime possible. How do you do that? We talked about the layered security, but if you want, we can just start with even the first layer, right? Sometimes if you can just put in 2 simple layers, the bad guy's just going to walk right away because there's plenty of open doors, right? I think of like a big cul-de-sac, right? If there's doors locked all over the place, the first 2 are locked, there's always somebody left their garage door open, right? There's always one. They're going to continue to go down, look for the low-hanging fruit. Don't be the low-hanging fruit. Here's how. create and require for your organization complex passwords with multi-factor authentication. I know they can still breach it, but it can slow them down or make them walk straight by. You never know. So 12 plus characters. I know it sounds really long, right? 12 plus characters, but it takes hundreds of years, millions of years to break a 12 character password with a upper lower number symbol. So 12 character password, upper lower number symbol. And then turn on multi-factor authentication. If you have O365 or Google people, it's free. It's part of your it's part of your service, right? Download Google Authenticate, download Microsoft Authenticator. It is part of the, and most of the cloud softwares out there actually can connect to those two. And if you need help with others like Duo or something like that, we can, Derek can reach out to me and I can help you and consult with you on how you can put multi-factor authentication on your devices and different things like that. The second thing to look less attractive, again, this became very popular during COVID of, now we've got remote employees, we have hybrid employees still out there. You have to make their home office look the exact way as your business office. BYOD, which is bring your own device, bring your own device, letting them go log in from grandma's computer when they go and work from Florida, being able to go do all those different things. That is where you're going to leave gaps and you're going to lose control over your security. If you say, look, it's fine if you work from home, but your home office is going to look just like if you're in the office, right, with user-based security, then you're comfortable. So there's protocols you can put in place. There's different devices that you can have to make sure that wherever they are, it looks like they're sitting in their office or in their cube or in their table, whatever it might be. Also, if you do not have business email, and I know a lot of people in business out there love to have their original Gmail addresses, right? So, abccompany@gmail.com, at yahoo.com, you cannot be either protected nor compliant. Those are public email addresses. You cannot put security on them. You cannot filter any information from it. They won't let you. So please go get a domain, go get a URL, and go buy O365 or G Suite. Or if you need help, again, Derek, I'll Google Workspace, I'll help any of your clients do this. Go do that tomorrow and at least turn on the multi-factor authentication for it. You'll really appreciate and think about it later. Okay, so quick recap. So you take it back to your office. User-based layer security provides the best protection. Actively managed to one cybersecurity standard. We use NIST. You can look that one up, or again, you'll have the slides here that you can go through. And authentication and complex passwords makes you the least amount of attractive. The first thing you can do this today to look less attractive to cyber criminals. All right, we can open it up to some question and answer through the chat.
Hey, Daniel, I'll just jump in real quick too. I mean,
Sure.
that was a great presentation and lots of very valuable information there. So like you mentioned a few points there, like the low hanging fruit scenario, exactly right. Small and medium sized business, because of like the less cyber hygiene, as you're basically referring to, is not in place. As it relates to specific coverages, like yes, hackers have actually gotten into like actual carriers and found information on policyholders, which is kind of crazy. And understanding kind of limits that they have. So on the flip side, you're actually seeing some sublimits to some of these limits, like ransomware is actually coming down in some regards, depending on the industry you're at. So again, it just kind of highlights the importance of like having the right cybersecurity in place up front to even get qualifications in some cases for renewal. So that's just, I want to highlight that piece right there. And one last point too, this is something I just kind of thought about. I went to another presentation yesterday, actually, and this was on the back end. So like the security response team. So when an event does happen, the nice thing is now most good cyber, like true cyber liability policies, have a breach response team. The challenge there is if the vendor on there that's going to help respond to the breach is not an approved vendor, then they're going to battle with who's on the insurance policy. So I'd recommend something we're going to start looking into is getting the vendors pre-approved before an event actually happens, because what you want to avoid is like downtime. Stop the bleeding as soon as possible, and that's what your breach response teams can do. So that's just something, it's a footnote to think about.
Those are great. Yes, and just to pile on that part, Derek. CyberFin as an organization, we do not actually have our own breach restoration recovery team on purpose, because we want to push them towards approved vendors with the cyber liability insurance, right? That's the best place to go, because, you know, knock on wood, you know, CyberFin has a great track record, but again, nothing's foolproof, right? And so we want to make sure that that's a good point. You want to use an approved vendor, and if you already have a vendor that you like, make sure you talk to your cyber liability insurance advisor, to make sure that they're approved vendor on that carrier for sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And Derek, the one thing too, I think that doesn't get brought up a lot is, you know, the IT companies or the MSPs that companies are working with. There's not a lot of questions that get asked. How do you handle once a breach happens? And the thing is though the insurance company may have a breach response team, if there's planning in place up front on the logs and the information if a breach was to happen, you can significantly reduce that forensics costs on the backside. And that's the thing we're seeing where, you know, where breach teams are going over the limits on the cyber liability policies, is that there was no logging or preparation on the front side of it from the MSP side of it. So that's one of the things, is when you're covering all these multi-factor parts and all of it's being logged and recorded, if a breach occurs, it's quite easy to figure that out and be able to work with that breach team. So I think we're going to see more of that. We're seeing more carriers talk about it. It's not just about the scary stories. It's more about like what actually happens on the backside of it.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up, Chris. That is the reason why, when I brought up the story earlier, it took them so long to figure out whose account it was, is they were not logging the multi-factor authentication. They were not seeing, you know, which user was getting bumped the most, right? And which one was getting into multiple sites. They didn't have visibility into it right away. So it took them a while to figure it out. Time is money, as they say, right? Yes, Tom.
What's your kind of overall general opinion on password management software? It's a great tool, but I've got everything in one place, and I've got hundreds of, you know, based on my type of business. So just thinking in general, kind of what's your opinion, and maybe if you have some tips on how to most effectively and safely use those tools.
Yeah, no problem. I love anything that helps slow down the bad guys, like password protection, right? But they're only as good as one piece of technology. Some of you may have heard LastPass was hacked last year in August. They took thousands of email or of the password vaults, and they are slowly unencrypting them one at a time and getting into the logins and passwords, because they really didn't, you know, explain to people, hey, you should have a different password, right? You should update your master password. So here's my tip, right? So yes, one password is one that I really recommend. LastPass is still a good alternative. If you have LastPass today, please go change your master password. Please go change all the passwords for all the things you're connected. Please do that. Second of all, if you do set it up, a 14 plus character master password with upper lower case, icon and a number will severely lower the risk of someone actually hacking into your password vault. And try not to use the same, like you could also ask the random generator on your password protector to make sure that whatever you do from one business application is different than the other application. Some people override that. And second, there is an MFA override that a lot of people click, an SSO or single sign-on. They click that. You should not do the single sign-on. You should make it do multi-factor authentication every time you want to get into your most valuable areas. Those are the tips that I would have on that side of it.
Okay.
And Tom, one thing too is I also think that you stick with like a YubiKey instead of using two-factor authenticator, or where it goes to an email or a text. You have to physically be at the spot to allow that two-factor to occur. And again, we can, you know, give recommendations out on that, but that's, they're easy to have, and they plug in. They're just like a little thing like plugs in from there.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thanks.
No problem. Yep. So you can either speak up with a question, or you can throw it in the chat. However, you know, I'm here to provide anything I can.
So would you guys then work with our MSP if necessary?
Yes,
Okay.
we only do,
Yep.
CyberFin only does cybersecurity. That's it.
Got it.
We're not a managed service provider.
Got it.
So we either help coordinate with them in the IT MSP, or help you find an IT MSP provider if that's something that you need.
Got it. Do you ever assist clients with completing like cybersecurity questionnaires for
Oh, you're
like I
stepping
have
on Derek's
vendors like
touchdown.
yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah. That
All
was
right.
Derek's touchdown. You want to do it?
What a
You wanna
great
say that?
segue, Tom.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Sounds
yeah.
good.
I'll give you $20.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we were talking about this. So like, obviously the tips that Daniel just talked about, the top three, that those are the easiest and most, I guess, the shortest route to getting something in place quickly. So they have a really cool kind of offer. So they're doing like these free 30-minute, like what I call cyber self checks, if you will. So they'll kind of go through your guys's kind of current environment, if you will, and say, hey, does this make sense? And are we missing anything specifically? And then they can kind of give you some pointers on how to work with. Maybe if it's a product that they can have, they'll implement them. And then if it makes sense for somebody else, they'll do that as well. But they're, as I said, they're very passionate about this space, and that's all they do is cybersecurity, which is kind of unique. There's a lot of good MSPs out there, but I think it becomes an arm of what they do. So I like the specialtiness with CyberFin. They're really good at that. So yeah, if anyone has questions about security in general, like sure they can reach out to Daniel or Chris directly, or if you're not sure how to get a hold of them, then reach out to myself or someone at the Cox Insurance Agency, one of your advisors, and they can get you in touch as well. So
Yep. Yeah. So part of the 30-minute no obligation cyber self check includes going through your cyber liability insurance questionnaire or due diligence or underwriting form, whatever you call it nowadays. We will bring that with, and we will help you answer those questions at no obligation to you, and help you feel confident where you can check yes or no. And to get access to that, just reach out to one of your Cox Insurance advisors and just schedule. And he's got the scheduling link. He'll schedule those times directly on our calendars. You just give them the date and time that works best for you, and they'll go right on our calendar and schedule for you.
perfect.
No other questions. Wow, this will be the first time that I did such a good job that nobody else had any questions but Tom. I love it.
I have a quick question.
Oh, there we go. I knew I wasn't that good.
So in regards to like autofill, like on Google or something where you can save your password, will that be a Google security issue, or is that something that you just shouldn't be doing as far as where you're like keeping password information?
Great question. I'll answer it in I'll give you two answers. One, do not do it. Please go in and delete them all. Two, they are not responsible if that gets hacked. You are. They're just offering it as a service for you. It is not their responsibility if someone is able to get into your password vault inside Google. And remember, Google's not in the cybersecurity business. They don't make any money on that.
Yeah. So is that vault typically linked through your whatever your Google email account is, or how does that, like, how would they get in?
You can go in your Chrome. You can go in your Chrome account.
Okay.
In your settings, and you can go in and eliminate it there. Or if you do have a Google Workspace, they changed the name, Google Workspace account, you can do it inside your Google Workspace account.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just one thing I want to just add to that real quick is also the cheap VPNs that are out there that are advertised, like NordVPN, those type of companies. I think people have the assumption, we come across all the time, that they think that it's securing them from the bad guys. And the way I kind of always look at it is it's more about just, all it's doing is kind of hiding your identity from the advertisers. That's it. It's not cybersecurity. And again, like Daniel said, if you read the white papers on these VPN companies, they're not responsible for breaches. So just, that's one thing that I think is we see come across a lot, like, oh, I'm signed up with NordVPN, or I'm signed up with this VPN. And it's like, if you really read it and understand what they are, they're not doing what most people think they're doing.
Any other questions or nothing in the chat, right, Daniel? See anything?
I didn't see anything in the chat. No.
Okay. We're right up at 11 o'clock, so we can wrap this up. But again, thanks for everyone attending this presentation. Daniel did an excellent job. Thank you for your time, and Chris as well. And yeah, if there's any additional questions, please reach out to either myself or one of your Cox Insurance advisors, and we can follow up. Thanks for your time.
Yep. Thank you very
Thanks a lot,
much.
guys.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Thanks for
Be
having us, sir.
relentless.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
Derek.
Daniel, are you going to stay on for just a second?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I would definitely